Hello, everybody. It is so nice to see you once again on a lovely Tuesday night. Thanks for joining us for another episode of AWS Show and Tell with Generative AI. My name is Trevor Spires. I'm a solutions architect here at AWS. Today, we've got a cool show for you focused on Amazon Bedrock and how it can enable some orchestration. There we go. We got the title, Orchestrating Resilient Supply Chains. We're going to talk all about it. But first, let's go around the horn. Rob, let them know who you are and where are you coming in from today? I'm coming in from the Boston area myself. If you're tuning in the chat, let us know like where you're at right now.
Rhymes with Boston, but it's not Boston. I'm in Austin. So down south, where it is incredibly windy outside tonight. We've got like massive wind. It's not raining or anything, just wind. But my name's Rob Higgerda. I am another solutions architect here at AWS. And co-hosting today with Trevor for this episode of AWS Show and Tell. But I'm one of the least interesting. We've got two far more interesting people as well on today's show that we're going to let them introduce themselves because they are the stars of today's show. So Sujatha, if you want to go next.
Yeah, maybe solutions architect following another solutions architect, right? So yeah, I'm another solutions architect at AWS, and
we have a lot of those at AWS, don't we?
I'll pass on to Marcelo now.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Really honor and a pleasure to be here. Marcelo Silva, coming from the San Francisco Bay Area, Menlo Park. I'm a product manager with Amazon Bedrock. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And great to be the first one I think we've had from the Bedrock team as well, which is awesome because obviously we're going to be talking a little bit about that because as Trevor was mentioning, we'll talk a little bit about some Bedrock in here. So we've got some interesting things, specifically focusing on some resilient supply chains, which I think is a really important topic. And I also we were prepping for the show. I was able to look through and see some of the things that Sujatha is going to be covering as far as her demo. And it's right up my alley because it is drag and drop on some of the stuff. And I am very simplistic. And I love my drag and drop stuff. So I'm looking forward to being able to show everyone else a little bit of what that looks like as well. And I mean, you kind of look at it from the surface, right? And you'll think, oh, well, this looks kind of simplistic. And then you start to look at everything that it can do. And I'm not going to go into any of that because that's I'm not stealing Sujatha's thunder. But lots of cool stuff, we'll be able to see. So why don't you tell us a little bit? I mean, I think we're going to get into seeing it, right, of what it looks like. And then we're going to go a little bit in talking to it because, just like the show title says, show and tell. We're going to do some show and then we're going to do some talking about it. We'll do some talking about it as we're going through. And of course, audience, as you're watching, ask questions. That's what we're here for, is to be able to show you some stuff, be able to answer some questions, hopefully, about Bedrock and what we're going to be going through on the different flows. So definitely don't hesitate.
I got a question to get us started, Rob.
There we go.
If you had to play one of the two instruments behind you, I see a trumpet and a trombone. Like what's your main?
The trombone.
Your main? The trombone.
The trombone. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Nice. I think we should hear that.
I think we don't want to lose viewers tonight, so we probably will not have a musical feature unless Trevor's also going to pick up the saxophone behind him as well, or the guitar.
One of these days,
a little jam session just for
one of these days. That would be lovely.
Let me know. I want to be part of that.
All right.
Yeah.
Not that I play anything, but I just want to be there to see the viewership increase over the next few weeks.
And to cheer, right?
Optimistic on that it will increase, but we'll see.
So I've had, ever since I saw this episode come in, I've had one question, like that keeps coming to my mind, because when I think of generative AI, I think about a lot of things. But I don't think about supply chains when I think about generative AI. And I'm kind of curious, what inspired like that idea of like applying generative AI to that particular problem? This was the first time I had heard of it.
Actually, this is something there is, everywhere we are applying generative AI. So why not on supply chain, right?
Maybe that's a better question. Why not? Yeah.
But think about it, right? There's so many disruptions, and supply chain resilience is so very important. Right from the pandemic times to ships stuck in the Panama Canal, or even the Ukraine wars. Forget about all of those, right? What about the new tariff wars? right?
Sure.
How do we manage our supply chain, right?
Right.
And
Yeah. People are
AI
probably
is
trying to
everywhere.
reroute like the way they're shipping things, prioritizing different product lines based on geos, all these things. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
fascinating.
And what we wanted to do is like generative AI capabilities, right? Let's talk about that. AI can be applied all in everywhere, right? In the supply chain, find out where the risks are. So this particular one, which we are going to show today, is going to focus on identifying the risk. So it's a small portion. You can build it big, but it's just going to showcase you that, right? So let me go and present that.
Love it. Love it. We got a question from the chat. I don't know the answer, but I'll pull it up because it's a great question. Somebody's diving deep on Bedrock. They want to know, hey, when's that prompt router going to support Cloud 3.7? I'll tell you what, the people on this call don't know the answer, but we're all very excited for when it comes. We're all very excited for when it comes.
Waiting for it.
Yeah.
It will
3.7
come.
was a
That's
yes.
one thing that we know. It's that will come. We just don't know when yet. But it's coming. Thanks for the questions. Keep them coming.
Can you see the nice prompt flow on the screen?
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa.
Beautiful.
We can.
What are we looking at?
It's a nice drag and drop. So you can just build an agentic workflow here by just dragging and dropping, right? So first I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the demo of it, and then we can go dig into how we can build it, whatnot, right? So let me go into the demo. I'm hoping I still have that. Oh, okay. I may have to open my own blog right now.
There is a corresponding blog that goes to the demo.
Process. So
I didn't realize that I copied the blog itself. So yeah, if you are watching this, you should go and look at my blog. Give me more views of the blog, right? So give me one second. Yep, there comes my blog. So
No
what I'm
shame in
going to
asking for
do
blog views. No
is
shame.
I'm going to send, so this is the use case, right? So we are going to ask, this is a flow, which will actually take the description. You can see here, this is the description. It's going to send and find out whether that particular device, which is a medical device, this is built for medical devices, if they are high demand, like a classification of 3, which means there is a threat to the life and it is very important devices, so we cannot afford shortages, right? So it's going to look through those classifications. It's going to find out whether there is a shortage, and then it is going to find out the mitigations, right? So that's what we are going to do. First, I'm going to show you. Okay. I should take the device 3 first. So let me take this first. And so that I don't waste time in typing. So I'm going to use this. This is the description. This is the shortage. It is trying to find out. And I'm going to I created a fake ID. So anytech.org. So I'm going to I'm going to send this request to the Bedrock flow, and it is mimicking, so there was no shortage. Let's try one more time. And let's see what happens now. Okay, looks like it found some shortage. So I'm going to walk you through this, right? Okay. Okay, let's try one last time.
It's never a live demo unless it's a live demo with gremlins included, right? Always has to be.
And there was no shortage. But I have a recording as well. Let's try one last time. If not, I can go to the recording. Okay, I am not finding the good one. So let me go into the recording instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through this.
I think I hate to say it. I hate to put you on the spot, Sujatha. I think that was this show. This is, I think, the 5th episode of the show. That was our first demo fail. So Congratulations. Congratulations. That was the first
We'll send you a
fail
trophy
of
later
the
on.
series. That's right. We need a special award of some type because it's bound to happen. It happens to if you do this professionally, you know it happens all the time. But you know they're professional because they've got a backup recording on lock for us just in case.
Just in case. You got to
Good
have those
job.
sometimes, right? Because one of those things that's just going to happen is, like I said, live demo gremlins are 100% real. 100%. And they're never kind. They're never like a kind live demo gremlin, right? That's like, here, I've made everything work incredibly fast for you and better for you. It's always, no, live gremlin demo is just like everything broke. Good.
And actually, this was recorded just like an hour back. So this was working an hour back. That's interesting. So let's try this. So what I'm going to walk through, I'm voicing over the demo right now. So it's the same description which I've put in here. I'm going to hit the run. So it's now going to go through different steps in the flow. First, it finds the whether there is a shortage, whether that's a Lambda function which is trying to find the shortage. If there is a shortage, now it's going to go. You can see on the left side there is a mitigation already populated. So it's just going to the knowledge base. It's getting the mitigation. And that's what it is going to show here, right? So you can see here there is a mitigation. The steps were populated by Bedrock, and we are using Claude here. So it's trying to get it is creating a comprehensive mitigation because Coachella implants are classification 3, which means they are life-threatening if we have shortages. And we also send emails, and this is the email that we sent. This is the same knowledge-based drafted comprehensive mitigation strategy, which was sent as an email. So now I'll also show you another one, which is device 2. Device 2 doesn't require comprehensive strategy because what is it, right? It is like, it is important, but still it's not life-threatening. So I'm going to replace that with oxygen mask. You can still stay without oxygen mask, right? So that's what we are going to mimic here. I'm going to run that, and I'm going to show you what it is going to do here, right? So in this one, it is going and fetching directly from S3 because S3 has already the documentation in it. So it is not going to Claude and drafting the entire comprehensive strategy, looking at various documents, but it is fetching the content of that some document in S3 and giving that answer out, right? So with this in the flows, you can see here, it is going and fetching the document from S3 itself.
So wait, how does I have a quick question. How does the agent know like whether it needs to do one task or the other? Because it seems like there's two different access patterns that you just described there.
Yep. So I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to definitely now go back. Give me 1 second because I will stop sharing. And I will come back on this thing now, right? So, and this is my browser. I am sharing my browser now. Let me know when you can see that. So what I'm going to, because that was a recorded demo, I'm going to actually show you the flow now, right? So this is the flow that we built. And you can see here, this is the Lambda, which is finding all the details. And this is actually taking the input, the input that is coming from which we passed. And then it is sending an object, which is both shortage as well as classification. And this is the node which is determining what action to take, right? So you can see here, it is taking shortage, it is taking classification, and then it is going into conditions. In this, we have specified two conditions and a default condition, right? If the classification is 2, and there is a shortage which is greater than 10, this is just a simple one. You can always change the conditions. I'm going to S3, and I showed you oxygen master device 2, which means there is not much life threatening this thing. So you're just fetching it from the S3 node. I'll go and I'll show you the S3 node, what it does. But if for the next condition, which is if the classification is 3, which is life threatening device, if there is a shortage, then it is going into the knowledge base. So Trevor, this is what is driving the intelligence, right? It is telling, first of all, it is fetching the shortages, it is getting the information, and now Bedrock is deciding, the flows are deciding which classification to take, which route to take, and based on that, it is going to the next nodes in the flow.
Yep, that makes sense. I think one thing I really like about this, as I'm like, this is one of the first times I've seen like a full configuration of this, and like one thing I feel like I'm constantly talking to customers about is like when you think about building an agent or something that's like agentic in nature, like there are a lot of steps, and I think sometimes it's we actually try to start with customers of like, hey, we should start before we start building anything. We should write this on a whiteboard and start
Yes.
building the workflow out visually. And so what I like about this is it's kind of you can do both at the same time, build it, dragging and dropping and building out the flow, and doing the integrations kind of in one UI. And I feel like because to me, a visual representation of this is pretty important, because it is kind of like a flow chart logic as you go through the steps of a typical agent.
Yeah, especially if you are having a lot of, these are mostly for you're building a system flow, right? And you want to have many things, many actions that needs to be performed. At that point, it comes very, very handy to have this visual representation, right? And conditions and iterations, whatnot in there.
Yeah, I don't know if you have any comments on this one, but somebody in the chat was saying like they find a big help is using flow output nodes. Is that almost like debugging the flow or something like that?
Yes. So let me show you what happened with this, right? So if you see this trace, in this, each of those, you can see it is an output trace here. It is giving you what are the fields, what is the output, what is the node name, every of these fields, right? You're seeing the output, how it is flowing. What is the bedrock, the knowledge base, the large language models, what are they thinking? All of that output is printed out in the trace.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and super helpful. When I'm first building this, I have to look at it like, what happened? Why did it fail?
Yeah.
Right?
And you can even see the
It
end-to-end
says-
latency here. I can see as well. So you could troubleshoot like performance of different parts of the flow as well.
Yeah.
That's handy.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that maybe the audience was asking about is actually the flow output block more to a certain extent in flows, right? Because that block, you can have different agents actually issue different outputs based on whatever that, much like you have in there, right? Different conditions going to different knowledge bases and things like that, and generating different outputs based on the conditions in workflow. I think one of the things that we like to stress with Bedrock flows is creating a deterministic overlay on top of something that's generative and undeterministic in general, right? One of the things that we released in Bedrock flows at GA was the capability to add guardrails, for example, or contextual grounding in knowledge base and all these kind of things, right? So these capabilities of creating a workflow, and you could think this eventually you will have, or you could do this via Lambda, human in the loop processes, like sending an email. Someone has to send an email back, say, hey, approve this mitigation strategy. Let's order these devices from XYZ. Let's assume it's part of the mitigation. And then a new agent goes and places the order of that particular device via whatever channels and those kind of things, right? So you're creating a deterministic behavior with several generative nodes that can do all kinds of cool stuff, rationalize on it, gather information, do semantic comparisons to it, identify the best path, and then go do something that is execute on that one way, shape, or form. So
I will double down on that, Marcelo, because the reason is, right? I mean, like we are talking, like Trevor, this, like what Marcelo is saying, right? This Lambda, I have two flows here, right? You can see here from knowledge base, you created a comprehensive strategy. Bedrock created that strategy based on all the documentation it has access to. And then you're sending a flow output, but I'm also having a parallel path, like what Marcelo was mentioning, right? You have a parallel path. This is just sending an email, and this is the email I got, right? So I should be having some emails. Oh, okay, I might have deleted it. Okay, but yeah, it sends the email. Instead, what you can do is you can actually create this is a Lambda function, so you can trigger that entire workflow out there. So pretty cool stuff that we can do from this.
Cool. We did have a question that came in as well as we were kind of going through some of this stuff here. And I'm going to pop it up here. There we go. Kind of working, about the different interactions and stuff like that and some of those things. Can you please explain how Lambda identifies and collects the classification from the database? I don't know if you can go a little bit into detail on kind of how those two interact and work with each other to make, these kind of things function as they're supposed to.
Yeah.
How does the function function?
Exactly.
That's the right way to ask that question.
What is the function junction or something? I don't know.
Lambda is not a generative AI in this thing, right? It's just doing normal, any language, this thing, right? So it's not the generative AI there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually your Lambda. So if suppose your organizations have already an existing Lambda, right? That is what we are trying to integrate and create the flows out of it. So in this case, if I go to this Lambda, this is just like I created a simulation. So you can look at this. This is just a Python Lambda. And what it does is it actually simulates the supply chain shortages. That's why sometimes it gives shortages. Sometimes it says no shortage, right? So it is just simulating that. And there is no generative AI call in this particular Lambda. But you can do that. You can always add generative AI into the Lambda as well.
Yeah, and you could, in that step, just to the previous question, right? How do you match what a particular device is to a category? This could be a semantic search to, or a hybrid search to a knowledge base, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You get a query and you try to match that query to a knowledge base that has all the different devices, what the category of the device is. And once the category is found, then that is made into an input onto the next step to identify how do I mitigate a potential shortage with this device, which now has been categorized by device 3. Let's assume someone mistypes oxygen mask and says oxygen face mask or something like that, right? Not exact the same term. Mm-hmm. And then we'll have the semantic search associated with that, identify the categorization, and then move to the next step. Again, that process of categorization can be done in a variety of ways. In here was hard-coded into a Lambda function, but can be part of a generative AI node, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add one thing
Lucas'
to that.
questions, though.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing to do that to that is I'm passing the outputs here, right? So here you can see there is an output where this is my output. I'm actually passing all of these as a response. And in the Bedrock, there is in the classification, this is the way to do it. The documentation will give you more details as well. The way you map it is because this is my output. I have a classification which I'm sending as a response. I'm mapping it to dot classification. This is how I'm mapping it, right? So you can map it this way. And I want to add one other thing, which Marcelo was mentioning, is the generative AI is actually doing the backend, right? If you look at this trace, it is actually looking at each of those. It is deriving information and then passing that information. So the inputs that are passed, these are passed by the node itself, like the generative AI node itself. But it is looking at the output that is coming from the previous node and then deriving a new input for the next node.
All right. That probably flows into a couple questions that came in while you're going through that, kind of having to do with very similar things to what we're kind of talking about for, interaction between different services. Like you said, the Lambda is just kind of simulating something, right? But you could have it interact with, and so we can look at something like this from one of the viewers here on YouTube. Does Bedrock Flow integrate with other services like DynamoD if you want to query that data with a query generated by an LLM? Is that something that'd be possible for it to be able to do, or are there limits to some of the things that can be done with the agents in interaction with other services?
No, you could easily do that, and the answer in AWS with Lambda you can do anything, right?
That's right. Yeah, 100%. Like Lambda is the key, and I have seen that now, but it's a good example though. Like I want to call out or like Mo, on something you said is like, does a Bedrock Flow integrate with us, or like if I want to query data with a query generated by an LLM?
Yeah.
Like it's a good question. Like you could potentially do that, but it's also a good question of like if you're querying a database, that's kind of a deterministic thing. So you might want an LLM to decide to query a database, but you might not want an LLM to create the query itself always, right? You might need some control to put over that.
Yeah, I think the question is, how do you translate a natural language query to a database query? And that you can do in knowledge bases with the integration with the structured data sources with a knowledge base block. Or you can do, again, the LLM could do it, or agents could do it, the integration of agents with knowledge bases. But if you have a structured data source, you could use agents to integrate the structured data source and take that natural language query and identify, how do I get this information out of this structured data that sits in the back end? Or the same thing can be done with the structured data connector that we announced that reInvent for knowledge bases as well.
Yeah, and you can also use that agent as part of the flow.
That's correct. You can add an agent in there as well.
Yep.
There's another question that I got to call because it's an old friend of mine from up here in the old Northeast, and I've had customers ask me this, so I want to put it on the screen. It's not so specific to the flows, but like how do you think of handling like an error or something the agent can't do? Like do you see patterns where people kind of pre-program responses, or like if the agent can't do what you need it to do, what does a customer what do you tend to recommend a customer send back in that response?
Yeah, definitely you need error handling, because there will be some errors, just like that happened today. So, I mean, this is not going to be your front end, right? There will be a front end which will be exposed to the end user. And that front end has to handle all the errors, whether if, for example, it is not able to finish the task in the manner that is expected. It should say something like, for example, in this case, right? It says I could not find a shortage, for example. It should say that, okay, I did not find shortages, or there was a system error. They should be error handling in the front end.
Yeah, and I think the question is also could be viewed as, how do you handle the errors that may take place in orchestration of an agent tooling, right? Agents has all these tooling calls, APIs, knowledge bases, Lambda, and all this kind of thing. And based on the request that comes into an agent or the query that comes into an agent, you are planning orchestrating and executing a workflow, right? And every step of that workflow, depending on the orchestration that you're using, something like React or your own custom orchestration, you are taking steps to identify things like, I could be calling an API in the database where this particular backend system could be down, right? So either you allow the orchestrator to handle that and try to find another source that could have that information, or you have to handle via an error handling type of function within your agent to say, unfortunately, this backend system is down at the moment. Let's try this in 20 minutes or something like that. But you need to handle those type of things, either from an orchestration point of view or from an overall flows point of view, from an error handling point of view, at the UI layer. But you might have to do in both the agents, if you're using agents for that particular reasoning and of the execution of a task. When one of the steps failed within an agent workflow.
Yeah, every step you may have to think through what kind of errors will come and how you want to message it back to the users. Or is there an alternative flow for that?
Yeah,
Great
makes
questions.
sense. Yeah,
So
no,
can I ask
for
a
sure.
question?
Yeah.
So Trevor and Rob, so based on this use case that we are talking about medical devices, with the customers that you see in your own segments and the breadth of customers that you see on a daily basis, what do you think the applications of such use cases could be?
Ooh, there's a lot, right? And so I'm in the same area as Sujatha, so I still cover federal areas. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different areas that you could like implement this into. We were talking supply chains, but like not even talking supply chains, right? Like just other types of use cases. There's a lot. I don't know, Trevor, if you have anything specific. I mean, you handle a completely different area than both Sujatha
Yeah,
and I do.
I work with a lot of our what we call like digital native customers that and so what comes to mind for me like is less specific use cases and more like the developer experience of building an agent today. Like what I've seen like without something like prompt flows, I've seen like usually organizations are building kind of like specialized teams that build agents because it's pretty building an agent is a pretty heavy lift. A lot if you're building it in like LangChain, or if you're building a really complex multi-step agent, there's a lot of development involved. There's a lot of code to be written, and it can be hard to teach people like the right tools and SDKs on how to do that. So to me, what stands out is just I bet it would be a lot easier to like teach an organization of developers how to build their own agent with something like this, rather than trying to teach them like some kind of like bleeding edge open source framework that like nobody might use next month because the next kind of flavor of the month framework has come along. So I can just see it accelerating adoption through that lens. But yeah, specific use cases. It's like the thing about an agentic workflow is like, and AI is it is so general purpose. Like I work with financial services customers. Certainly, there's a lot of like support style use cases where you need complex agentic workflows. Really, you can apply it just about anywhere you could apply AI. This is more of a different builder experience to build the same sort of products.
Yeah, for regulatory and compliance type of industries that we are talking about in here, right? There is a lot of value in creating these deterministic flows. And let's just remember that even though we're creating a sort of an agentic workflow in here with Bedrock flows it's not needed to create agentic workflows, right? You can go beyond that, right? You can create flows that don't use agents at all. They are agentic in nature, on Gen AI application in nature, right? That could have multiple agents or multi-agent orchestrator that you're calling eventually a multi-agent orchestrator to do a variety of things, right? You could even call ultimately a LexBot, for example, as an AI service to do something else. The output of a particular output block could be calling a Lambda function that calls a TTS model to create a voice, for example, or say something that based on regulatory and compliance has to be with a certain tone, with a certain exact sentences and that kind of stuff, right? Financial, public sector, and those kind of things that have regulatory and compliance things in mind, right? So I think the value of flows is creating this deterministic behavior in something that it's generative and undetermined by nature without having to put the guardrails. The guardrails is the flow that you create, right?
Yeah. Marcelo, I can tell you, Bedrock is my favorite service. I shouldn't be saying that, but I double down on that. It's like, we can build, now that I'm so used to building these agents and flows, I can build overnight flows, overnight demos right now. That's why it's my favorite.
No, and it's cool because like you're going through and showing the flow, right? You're showing right within the console, like the test bed that you have there to be able to do inputs and testing. And obviously we're talking, okay, well, That's great for testing, right? It's a lot of additional logic things that you have to build on top of that. But it gives you that good ability to build that flow and test it and be like, before I spend a ton of time going through like what Trevor mentioned before, and we were talking about all the additional like components you got to layer on top, you can be like, this was a lot quicker than me having to completely write this from scratch and do it. Where you're like, release here, build my flows. Like I said, for me, lovely GUIs, be able to connect things, logically see things, how they flow. Because you do, like, you know, even in your blog, you've got business flows, right, for things. And this helps you to tie those, kind of like merge that, where you can be like, even showing like stakeholders and things, here's what the flow looks like. You can see it. It's like, it's illustrated for you. Maybe they don't understand all the layers underneath the tech of what's actually connecting. But if you can show them kind of at that high level, this is the flow. Here's how things are going to work. Here's how things are going to function. Here's a little testing. Give us the time to be able to actually implement this to a full-fledged application without having to say, I'm building a full-fledged application to start, kind of thing. So gives you that
and the cool thing is these building blocks, which might be agents that have already been created, guardrails that have already been created. When you click on those building blocks, right, and you go to the configuration of them, the ones that are accessible to you will show up in there. All the agents, they're already in there. So you can pick the agents, you can pick a guardrail, you can pick a knowledge base, you can pick a Lexbot, you can go to prompts and customize your prompts and do these kind of things at will and create these workflows that maybe a business owner could be sitting behind someone and saying, hey, I want to build this new thing and I want the outputs to be as such. And you could easily prototype these kind of Gen AI applications using this kind of environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that capability that when you put a node in there, if you want a Lambda, you can select the Lambda from there. If you have access to it, you can select the knowledge bases that you have created. It's amazing. I mean, I don't have to look for what is the name of my Lambda. I don't have to do that. I can just choose from what is available. So
yeah, that's nice. We had this comment come from this random LinkedIn user. It says, we're waiting for an episode to dive deep on Bedrock agents. In reality, it shows up as LinkedIn user unknown, but it's Anil, our other host. It just only shows us that for some odd reason here. But Anil wants to know when we're going to wait for an episode. It's like, Anil, you help run the show. We can probably make that happen at some point in time, right? So
for sure.
I have another blog. I can come again.
There you go. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jyoti, can you tell us how did you because this is not the only blog and the only thing you did with this customer, but can you tell us the impact of the work that without naming the customer, the impact that this generated with the customer and the type of adoption that we have been able to gather with this customer in terms of using Bedrock flows as an easier to use tool and low code, no code type of implementation?
Yeah, so when I first showed them, they were like, first question is, can I replace my Appian flows? Can I replace my business rules? Yes. But they loved it. That's the answer, right? I mean, they loved it because it's easy, because it's able to use the generative AI capabilities, and they can see like all the things that we discussed. They can see the flow right there, right? So they were able to visualize and test it and then go to production, right? So right now they have started working on flows. They have started adopting agents, but that's not yet in production. However, they have adopted knowledge bases. They are super happy with Bedrock Cloud. That has given efficiencies. I would say the metrics are out, by the way. It's 98.67% efficiency.
Wow. And that is with the knowledge base. Knowledge bases is in production?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Just with knowledge bases. And and now they're super excited. That's why they started building the agentic flows, the prompt flows, all of those. They are super excited because they can see that metrics coming in, right? So
I think Bedrock is funny like this, where like it's they're like, you have to start somewhere always. And, and in my experience, most customers they start with a foundation model. A model comes out, and the developers get excited, leadership gets excited, somebody gets excited about Claude 3.7 or Nova Pro when it dropped right after reInvent. There was a lot of buzz around it, and then that gets people in the Bedrock ecosystem, and then they start to realize like there's all of these additional builder tools and capabilities to just to help. I mean, because getting access to a foundation model is one thing. There's a lot of places to get access to foundation models, but what really matters is how quickly, effectively you can build software on top of those foundation models, right?
I agree 100% on that, because it's efficiency, right? How fast you can build it. So,
and you can do pretty much almost everything you want through the prompt. You can guardrail through the prompt. You can do prompt injections, mitigation through the prompts, but eventually this is not scalable, right? These things are not scalable. So that's eventually, as you see the capability of a model, because new models are coming out all the time, and you are able to take these capabilities and translate into a managed service like guardrails or knowledge bases and things like that, that can augment the foundation models capabilities. That's where you extract data. That's where you extract value of the overall workflow, right?
I have a soapbox that I'm on because you said you said I'm gonna step up on it for a second. Is like one thing that I see a lot of customers do that I think folks on the stream, you're lucky enough to hear this advice right now to maybe reconsider maybe not making this mistake. Is they'll think like this space is moving so fast, and guardrailing is a great example. Like I've seen customers start to build their own guardrail systems, right? And I've seen customers start to do that like last year sometime. Now they've got a team of like 3 or 4 engineers, and all they do is focus on the guardrail system within some financial service organization. And meanwhile, it's like we've got an API for that, We've got an API for that, folks. You don't need a team of 3 engineers managing guardrails. You want those talented AI engineers focused on building applications that driving your business forward, or like helping regulatory readiness, like you were mentioning for some of these regulated institutions.
Sure. And guardrails is very, very popular right now, right? I mean, if you think about it, not many offerings are there for guardrails. You can use those guardrails with anything, right? So even
that was a change at reInvent, right? That was a change I remember at reInvent that was really exciting, is expanding to support additional models with guardrails.
Yeah, and the cool thing about guardrails, I don't know if we talked about this before, right? One of the things, I don't know, Sujata, if you showed before on the interface, but now with flows, you actually have the capabilities to integrate guardrails right there.
Can you show us that actually, Sujata? I'd love to take a look at, because I'm looking at it in my UI and I can see. I don't know if I see a guardrail component, but I'm like, how would I add a guardrail to something?
In the flow. I can show you that. So this is my knowledge bases. You can see here. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So here is my guardrails.
Yeah, it's you can see here, but you can integrate. Yeah.
Yep. It's on my knowledge bases, so I can just when I add my knowledge bases, I can just choose whatever guardrails I've created, and just use it. That's it. That's as simple as selecting from a drop down.
Yeah,
and
so
you
can have like
guardrails from a knowledge base is that it's done both an input and output, right? You may actually create a query that has some sort of hits some of your guardrail rules in terms of obscenity or that kind of stuff. You should not even go to the model at that time and spend any money doing that kind of thing, right? Agreed. So we should be at both an input and output. So it could be that it is part of the hallucination of a model, or the response of a model, but could also be a user query that is outside of what your organizational practices allows you to do. So
yeah, and a big thing I loved is like you're reducing the hallucination with guardrails, right? Initially, that was one of the things I noticed. I think it's more than a year now, but during the initial days of LLMs everywhere, there were some hallucinations, right? The models were very raw, Cloud was not even there at that time. But then with guardrails, now you can make it so grounded to the facts, right? So that's amazing capability, actually. I love
Yeah,
it.
and I think that's the value of, to a certain extent, a combination of flows and agents, right?
Yeah.
Because with agents, you have this completely unbound set of possibilities where a reasoning model is trying to orchestrate an action to
Yep.
execute something. But you want to
Yep.
put some guardrails around, and you want to say, don't do this, don't do that. And you can form these guardrails to create a path in which this agent is going to somewhat execute. The value of now using flows is that you can create that path, the deterministic path, and at one point in time, call a multi-agent orchestrator or an agent itself just to execute a particular task.
Yeah.
Right? And that
Yeah.
particular task is going to be smaller, more determined, and more absolute to that particular node in the workflow. And that where you want that to be, then control is returned to Bedrock flows, and you can continue with deterministic, or you can go directly to another agent or whatever it might be, right? So the
Yeah.
value
So
in
I
here
can.
is it's that you start with this deterministic path that has pretty undeterministic behavior at different nodes where you can afford to do that with guardrails in place.
Yeah, and I can just drag and like just adding to your point, right? You can just drag and drop this agent, connect to any of these nodes, right? It's as simple as that. And you are embedding the probabilistic nature of agentic flow into a more deterministic flows, right? That's amazing there. And also, just want to highlight since I'm here, you have collectors and iterators, so you can iterate through these steps. So you can iterate, and you can after you finish your iterations, you can collect them and then pass it down. So for example, if I want to find supply chain shortages for more than one device, right, all the shortages for all the devices, then I'll be putting an iterator in front of this, like this, in front of the lambda, and then add that once the iteration is completed from lambda, I'll put the collector to collect all the results from that lambda and then pass it to the downstream seeds, right? So there's so many capabilities. And to the Marcelo's points, right, you have uh, S3 retrieval, storage, and lex, so you can put it into your chatbot as well. So
Wait, Lex in
yeah.
Bedrock?
Yeah.
I've heard of
to
Bedrock
enable
from
voice
Lex.
into your Bedrock flows type of a thing.
Is that what you could support, like voice modality by adding Lex?
That's correct.
That
you could
Wow.
add Lex to do some voice stuff. That's how I mentioned you could do. And in that case, Lex could be calling something like Poly, for example.
Yeah.
And from the flow output, you could be calling a TTS to give a particular generic voice in Poly to go and say, hey, you have been approved for your loan on a very normalized type of thing with always the same type of output and with a very monotone and professional manner, whether you've been approved or disapproved, right?
Yeah.
I think our buddy Kiefer is picking up what you're putting down in terms of how it can really help with these deterministic flows. Like to me, that's definitely something I'm leaving this demo with. Is like, it is. I think when I hear deterministic flows, I'm probably going to think at least of like prompt flows to visualize them, but maybe to build out deterministic flows when that's important for a customer.
Exactly. And add those probabilistic steps via agents, knowledge bases, and all that, where you have the capability of doing that and returning control to flows to say, what do you do next with that information, right?
Yeah. Yep. A lot of possibilities there.
A lot. So many different things.
Anyone in the audience that has used flows before, that can tell us their use case?
I know we've got at least one flows user in the audience. To Jose. Jose seems to be a flow power user, actually.
Right.
Yeah, Jose, tell us. How you using flows?
He's been doing a couple different things. I think in some of the different areas, he's been looking at different ways to do some different things on some different guardrail usage and prompts for. I can show one of them here. Give us a little shout out here for some of the things. It's been pretty conversational on the YouTube side of things, but another thing I've been trying to do is to dynamically trigger a guardrail usage on a prompt node instead of having a conditional and 2 prompt nodes, just to keep the campus as clean as possible. Because that is a good thing to do, right? Like, you don't want to have it be. It's nice to have all the flexibility to have all the steps and everything, but then at some point it gets to be like any other flow chart, right? Where you look at it and you're like, it doesn't do anything for me anymore.
Spaghetti mess.
I now have no idea where anything goes because I've made it too complex.
Yeah, and one cool thing that we have in flows as well is the capability to do versioning and alias, right? You can create different versions of the workflow, associate to different aliases, and create and do A/B testing on different flows, right? Maybe you have a knowledge base that is internal, a knowledge base that's external, and do testing with those, or a new version of a knowledge base based on a new connector that you may have added to it, and you want to see how that impacts the user experience. So it's also a cool thing to be able to version these flows and attach them to different aliases that you can literally create different Gen AI applications from.
Yeah. And I actually was looking at it because I when you were talking about to prompt chaining, Jose, so I have another one which I'll pop up on the screen probably to show you what I've done. There's so many things that you can do, right? So let me quickly pop up on the screen.
And
So
thanks,
this
Jose, for sharing it. Very nice. Appreciate
yeah.
it.
So this is another one where this is an agent which takes the, I shouldn't be bringing that up, but it does prompt chaining. You can see here, I get the knowledge base. I want to actually parse that, and from the knowledge base, I get the results. I actually do prompt engineering on top of it to create a HTML page. So you can now create a HTML page and display it as part of the front end. So the front end actually will show you a HTML format.
Cool. Super flexible, super flexible.
Yep.
Okay.
In the loop. Just reading some comments.
Questions?
No, I don't know if it's questions, but anytime I see human in the loop, it catches my attention, because I know there's a lot of use cases where folks want a human in the loop, but
yeah.
But no, I don't see any more questions. But folks, this is your last call for questions, because we're about to wrap up, shut this thing down. But it has been an absolute pleasure having you guys on today, having both of you on today to talk through prompt flows. This was my first prompt flows. So folks in the chat, if it was helpful for you, please send our guests a big thanks for spending the time with us and walking us through prompt flows this week. And get those last questions you got. Any parting words of wisdom, Marcelo and Sujatha? Hopefully we'll have you on again sometime soon with some other demo. But any parting words of wisdom when it comes to AI, prompt flows, or Bedrock for our viewers before we send them off into the rest of their evenings?
I would say the sky is the limit here. You have so many possibilities here. You can build so many things with Bedrock, but I will let Marcelo speak about it. He's the owner for it. So
yeah. So I think that the thing is, I love how people experiment with foundation models and have, and spend a lot of time identifying how these foundation models could do things for them. I'm on the dev tooling side, meaning these different primitives, if you will, like agents, knowledge bases, flows, and all that allows you to build an application. So the thing that I would like to ask everyone is, like, as you start playing with Bedrock, get with your account team, your partner team, or whoever you work with on AWS, and give us feedback. The only way that we can improve the product or do anything with the product is based on customer feedback. And as a product manager, I live and die by this kind of thing, right? I cannot take a feature into the future because I think it's cool, or my development team thinks it's cool, right? It needs to have customer feedback. It needs to be grounded on a customer desire. We can come up with the initial idea because we are dealing with all these different things, but at the end of the day, it has to be verified and validated by our customers. So I thank you so much for all the feedback you give us, and get us on a call when you have feedback, but play with it, as Sujata said, and let us know.
Always get hands-on and play with things, right? It's always, I
Yeah,
love doing that.
that's it.
You get a chance to learn.
That's correct.
And go search out for the blog. You should see all of that. And there's a YouTube video as well. So
We dropped the
Incredible.
link to the blog, and I think in the chat, so people should be able to go out and take a look at the blog at least and see that. And yeah, they can definitely take a look at the YouTube video on it, because you got a little demo that shows what we saw today. But they can also just come back and watch today's show episode later on demand, right, and watch the demo again. So see the different
That's
things.
true. Now it's going to be on YouTube in two places, on the long form version of this show, and then the short demo that you all uploaded before. So
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you everybody for coming along. Thanks folks for joining us. We are signing out for this week. Come back next week again for AWS Show and Tell with Generative AI. Bye everybody.
Thanks, Trevor and Rob.
thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Cheers.
See you.